everybody, where's York here? And we are going again for this week's episode of York Talk, everything sales and business. And welcome everybody, and we appreciate all the support and we appreciate everything that happens around here. So you know what? We've got an actually pretty special episode today. I'm pretty excited because what we've done is over the last month, we've got all the questions and, we've got all the direct messages and emails that everyone's come in, and we sort of went through them all. And so we've sort of come up with, I guess, 4 of the main questions that people have asked over the last month or so. So we're going to bring you some great questions that have been come through, and we're also going to give you the great answers behind them. So first of all, I just want to say thank you again to every single person who sends the messages in, who shares it or likes it or comments through the Facebook Live there. We're also on Instagram Live. We record it. You probably see us go onto YouTube, and then we even get onto iTunes, etc. So I just want to say thank you to everyone out there who shares it, who likes it. And, we've got some great followers who consistently follow us on a day by day and week by week basis. So I just want to have a bit of a shout out and say thank you to everyone out there. So we just put a post out earlier today because it looked like we're going to be having to reschedule today's 1 o'clock due to a few meetings, but we're able to sort of wrangle the times around, so we're able to keep our 1 o'clock commitment. So we do it every Tuesday at 1 o'clock Australian Eastern Standard Time, and you know what? We go for about 15 minutes, so it's not a great deal of time out of people's lives. We give you some great content. It's about marketing, it's about business, it's about sales, it's about entrepreneurship, it's about people who want to be better on a weekly basis, and this is what York Talk is all about. So today, you know what? So when we sort of went through all the different questions that people were emailing in or they were direct messaging us in, we sort of went through and we tried to categorize them a little bit so we could hit a bit of a broader scope when it comes to the questions that were being asked. And one of the first questions we had were having people ask us to have a look at their Instagram page or have a look at their Facebook page. And at the end of the day, I want to come back to maybe the business side of it in a way. And there was 2 things that really stood out when we started to go through and look at some people's Instagram pages or some of their Facebook pages. And it was more so people who were trying to look like they were trying to start some online businesses, or they were trying to design, a product or service, etc. And so 2 of the points that we looked at were, if you're trying to launch a product or service or you're starting a new business, the first thing is don't use an email address which is like a Gmail or a Hotmail. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're a one-man person or one-woman show. You want to make sure that you hold some credibility and you hold some trust behind the clients looking. Excuse me. Anyway, just getting a phone call there, but that's okay. We'll just stop that and keep moving forward, right? So anyway, you want to make sure that you stay clear of your Gmail or your Hotmail email addresses. You want to make sure, just get your company email address sorted. It's really cheap to do. It's really easy to do, but you hold a lot more credibility behind that email address. The second thing you want to look at is don't put your mobile number down. You can put your mobile number down, but what you also want to do is, go and maybe get a 1-300 number or a 1-800 number, depending on where you live in the world. And, you can get that really, really cheap on a monthly basis. And then you can actually have that linked to your mobile number anyway. So you could actually hold your 1-300 number above your mobile number. And what it's going to do is it's going to give your organization a lot more credibility behind the scenes. You may, like I said, you might be a startup, it might be just on your own in your apartment, getting it all together. But what it's going to have is a lot more trust and engagement from your clients. So make sure, so the 2 points there is make sure that you don't have a Gmail or a Hotmail. Get your company email address. And then the second one is make sure I reckon add on a 1-300 number there. You can do it really, really cheaply. And and then you can layer in your mobile number after that. Because what happens is if you've got a Gmail and then you've got a mobile number attached to either your Facebook or your LinkedIn or, your Instagram, it just shows that you haven't matured as an organization. And even though your organization has it, there's little things that we can do to actually put that credibility around there. So there's your 2 points there from that question. So the first one there was when we went in and had a look at a lot of people's Facebooks or the Instagram accounts. They're the things that we picked up. The second question that comes in a lot of times is, how do you stop getting objections once you show the money. So obviously Sales Coaching International, we're a sales coaching and business organization. In a lot of cases, we speak about how to overcome objections and how to close more sales, increase transaction size, how to really nail down that client and gain monetary exposure for your own organization, etc. So the question here is, how do you stop getting objections once you show the money? So in a lot of cases, once you show your client the proposal and you show the money, then all the objections come out, right? Oh, look, I can't afford it, or we don't have the time, or we're looking at other competition. So you start to get all these different objections as we go through. So one of the key ways here is let's get those objections out before we show the proposals. We need to test the water and see whether or not we have our clients engaged or not. So we're going to ask a simple question, and what, I'd write this down. I'd start putting this into your sales process every single time. And so put money aside for a second to your client. Is there any other reason why you wouldn't want to become our newest client today? Is there any other reason why you wouldn't want to purchase our product today? Is there any other reason why you wouldn't want to purchase our service today? So let's start to extrapolate, those objections before we get to the proposal and before we get to the money. We want to make sure that we uncover as much as possible. Let's see if they're ready to purchase to start with. So what a lot of sales agents do is they go through their process and then they throw the money out to their client, and then they get a whole heap of objections. They wonder why, and it's because they never added that step into their sales process to actually extrapolate and get those objections out before they went and showed the money. Because if your client's not ready to purchase, then there's no point showing the money. Let's cut ourselves a bit of time here, because of the fact that there's no point going into that process if your client isn't ready to purchase anyway. So that to me was one of that question there. We sort of rounded off because there was a lot of different questions along that line. So I guess the answer to this one here is to stop getting objections once you get to the money. Let's precondition them first. Let's see where they're at. Let's actually ask them to purchase before we get there. So therefore we start to bring the objections out. Then we can overcome them, and then we can go and show our proposal or the money part of our selling process. So that's the thing. So putting money aside, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, whatever however you do your training, right? Is there any other reason why you wouldn't want to do this today? So let's pull the word in and say, let's bring that urgency, let's bring that entertainment value, what I call, into our selling process. The next question, this is probably a bulk of the questions that came in. It's all about the decision on day objection. We all, as salespeople, we get this on a daily basis. I need to go away and think about it, right? So, and it's, to me, it's, if you don't do it right and overcome this objection correctly, you actually dig a far bigger hole. Actually, for an amateur salesperson, this is definitely the hardest objection to overcome. And as you get some experience, it's still a difficult objection to overcome, but there's methods and ways to be able to improve your close rate when you get this objection. The first thing that we need to look at is, why actually do we get this objection? What actually comes about? Why do we get, I need to go away and think about an objection to start with? So the first thing is, I'm going to put it straight out there in blood. They're not sold. The client's going to sit there and say to you, I need to go away and think about it, if they're not sold. If you haven't done the process, if you haven't built up that emotion and you haven't justified it with logic and you haven't shown them the benefits over the features of your selling process, they're going to go away and say they need to think about it. But pure and simply, they just weren't sold. We need to have a look in the mirror and take some accountability for our sales process. And we need to understand that sometimes we just didn't sell them. So at the end of the day, we can't use the decision on day as an objection, because we created that objection ourselves because we didn't sell them. Hey, success understand Vlad, how you going, man? 10x, appreciate it. Just a little message there on Instagram Live. Hey, thanks for joining us, buddy. The second thing is, a lot of times we get decision on day objection when we give them too much information. When you give someone too much information, of course they're going to have to go away and think about it, because you just clog their mind up. So you've given them so much information and so much to think about, that's the only thing they can actually do. They've got to take away all that information, then they need to go and process that information. And the actual chance of getting a sale out of that client is really remote, because of the fact that you've just bombarded them with so much material and so much of your process that you have within your selling system. So we need to make sure that we don't give them too much information. But on the reverse, sometimes we get decision on day objection when we give them too little information. But this is okay, because we can always add information. Whereas the previous one, if we give them too much information, we can never take it back. You're never going to undo that as an objection there. But if we give them too little, we can always add more, and we can continue putting that information or selling process into that model there. The next one, so the fourth one here is we didn't create any urgency. So we need to make sure we have that urgency. We need to make sure we create or agitate that problem. So therefore, we bring that urgency in. So therefore, they need to make that decision today. So if you don't bring any urgency into your process, into your sales process, then you're going to get this objection quite a lot. I need to go away and think about it, because they don't actually have anything to grasp and want to say yes today, to take that action step today. So the more urgency that you can build into your selling process, the less you're going to get of this objection. So if you can really bring a lot of urgency and create or agitate that problem to a really high amount, then at the end of the day, you're going to reduce that objection dramatically, because of the fact that, you've developed or agitated or created this problem, right? And you're the only solution that can fix it. So therefore, for them to take an action step is a lot easier for them. And then I reckon the last one here, a lot of times people will give us the I need to go away and think about it objection when they, to me, they're a bit too proud to say that they maybe can't afford, depending on what you're selling. So if you're selling maybe a high-end or mid-level product or service, sometimes they say they need to go away and think about it, when in actual fact they just can't afford it. But we need to get that out. We need to find what that true objection is. So then, therefore, we can price them at a different level. So there are your 5 reasons why I reckon we get decision on day objection. The first one is they're not sold. Let's own it. We didn't do our process well enough. We didn't get them across the buying line, and therefore we actually screwed up the entire sales process, and we just didn't sell them. The second one was sometimes we give them far too much information. Then sometimes we give them too little information, so therefore they're going to go away and need to think about it. We also don't create any urgency. So therefore, they've got nothing solid for them to actually take that action step today. And sometimes we're selling, a mid or a high level product that they're just too proud to say they can't afford it. But we still need to get that objection out. So therefore, we can actually then close it, because that sale's not lost there. So that was the decision on day. So instead of how to overcome decision on day objection, because we've done that a few videos back, you can go back through YouTube or whatever and check that. But let's have a look at why we actually get that objection. And then the fourth one here, the fourth question, which we're going to cover here is, so we kind of rounded this question off as well, because there was a fair few questions along this line. When do you know how to move on through your sales process? When do you know to move on from one step to the next step through your sales process? That's a really good question. The thing is here, there's 2 parts to this question. First of all, do you actually understand your entire sales process? Do you understand from one step to the next step correctly? You might have your discovery phase through to your credibility, then you need to create or agitate that problem. Do you understand your selling process, and do you understand what you need to get out of every single part of that process? Because we've talked about previously, we need to really shut those doors. So therefore, we're going to have a fire alarm here. So therefore, we need to be able to shut those doors. Oh, gotta love technology in buildings, don't you? I reckon that's hilarious. Anyway, should be stopping in a minute. So anyway, we need to make sure we shut those doors, so therefore we can move on to the next step of our process, and then those objections don't come up at the end. So that first part of that, do you actually understand the sales process and what you meant to get out of every single step? The next thing is, when you know when to move on in 2 parts, this next part of this question. The first bit is when you actually have the information required of what that step is meant to have achieved. So for example, if we're going through, let's say for example, we're going through the discovery phase of your selling process. Once you understand, the key requirements that you need to achieve in that step, then you can move on. So if you're looking for the dominant buying motive, or if you're looking for, say, past decision habits, or if you're trying to find out, a problem needed for them to purchase your product or service, and you do that through your discovery phase, then once you have that information, you're able to move on. The second part is sometimes it takes a bit to get that information, and then your clients can get a bit bored. If they're getting bored, you need to move on at the same time. See, what happens, though, is we have sales agents or sales people who get so pigeonholed that they go through their selling process and they feel like they've got to ask every question in the discovery phase, right? So therefore, even if they get the information in the 3rd or 4th question, they're still going to ask the 10th, 11th, 12th question and bore the living shit out of the client. The other bit is, especially when you're covering your product, a lot of sales agents will explain everything about their product and service, right? Instead of what actually works for your potential client. Instead of saying, okay, this client needs these 3 points and that's exactly what they need, they'll explain everything about it. And again, they'll bore the living shit out of them, and so that's, to me, came back to the critical nature of this question, which was, how do you know when to move on? How do you know when to go from one step of the selling process to the next? So the first one was, we need to understand what we actually need out of your selling process. What's the objective? And then the second thing is, once you've got that information, or you've got that information across to them, and you've done your tie downs or you've done your commitment questions and they've answered it, effectively, then we know to move on. Once we've done that, move on, because you're going to bore them. And as soon as you start to bore your client, the drop down in your sales close is going to reduce. So we need to make sure we understand, to me, more importantly, we need to understand what outcome of each sales step is all about. So make sure you understand that, and it's going to make that question a lot easier to understand of when to move on. So they're the main points of the questions for today. The first one was, have a look at our Instagram and Facebook pages. So we did that. So let's build that credibility up. Let's not use the Gmail or Hotmail email addresses, right? Let's put a 1300 number in. It's going to show a lot more credibility within your own organization. Doesn't matter how small or big it is. We looked at how to reduce the objections once you're showing the money. So we spoke about that. Then we looked at the decision on day objection and why we get that objection. Then we just covered then how do we know when to move on through your sales process. So again, everybody, I want to say thank you again for this week. Make sure you like it. Make sure you share it. Jump onto YouTube. It'll be on there in the next day or so. It'll be on iTunes, so you can listen to it in your car again if you need to. We covered actually a fair bit today, so make sure you go back and re-listen to this or re-watch this, because you get a great deal of information out of it. My name is Wes York. We'll see you again next Tuesday, 1 o'clock Australian Eastern Standard Time. If you want to find out a bit more about what we do, jump onto wesyorksales.com. We have the Elite Sales Club, which is one of the best online sales platforms in the world. You can learn how to overcome objections, advanced closing strategies, how to actually become a leader. You know what? There's so many managers out there who do a shit job. Actually, let's become leaders and lead people. So the platform has absolutely huge amount of education courses. So jump on the Elite Sales Club. And again, you can get there through wesyorksales.com. If you haven't got my book, jump onto Amazon and get my book, and Confessions of a Timeshare Salesman by, again, me, Wes York. It's a great sales book. It's about the selling process and the steps to get through that selling process. So I want to say thanks once again. Everyone have an absolute cracking week. Get those sales, get that close rate up, and we'll see you again this time next week. See you, buddy.